From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
U.S. government bans Kaspersky and sanctions 12 executives. Evolve Bank confirms data breach, undermining Lockbit's Federal Reserve claim. And the UK's largest nuclear site pleads guilty over cybersecurity failures. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have selected from this past week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we're ready for some insight, opinion, and expertise on all of these from our guest, Jim Bowie, the CISO over at Tampa General Hospital. Jim, know you're a busy guy. Thank you so much for making the time and being here.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah, I cannot wait to get into these stories. You were helping curate them this week for the Week in Review, so I'm really excited for some of your thoughts. A lot of big stories, a lot of big angles I want to get your thoughts on. Before we get into those, though, I have to thank our sponsor for today, Prelude Security. You're 30 minutes away from peace of mind. Join us on YouTube Live. Do so. Go to CISOSeries.com. Hit that old events dropdown and look for the Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review image. You can click on it to join us. If you are in our Discord for Super Cyber Friday, we're going to be posting links there as well. So make sure you check those out and be sure to contribute your comments. I want Jim's thoughts, but I also want your thoughts. I see you, CCL, Kevin Farrell, Incredulous, Cordate in there as well. Let me hear your thoughts as we're going through this. Would love to get some more. We got about 20 minutes, though, so let's just jump right in. First up here, the U.S. bans Kaspersky and sanctions 12 executives. These sanctions were issued by the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Asset Control, we know it as good old OFAC, and pretty much freezes all their property and interests. These actions come on the heels of an announcement made by the government on June 20th regarding a ban on selling Kaspersky antivirus software due to it being a Russian organization. The ban starts on July 20th, and software updates to its U.S. customers will be prohibited on September 29th. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said now would be a good time for companies to find an alternative to Kaspersky for their security needs. I'm just going to say sound advice there. Thank you, Secretary Raimondo. But that U.S. individuals and businesses can continue to use or have existing Kaspersky products and services that are not violations of the law. So you will not go to jail for using things that aren't going to get software updates. So Jim, Kaspersky has alternated over the years between having some good collection of researchers to being a Russian organization at a time when associating with a Russian organization, not exactly great optically. So why now? Do you get a sense that this is part of a strategy about maybe eliminating risk? Maybe some new evidence came to light, or is this, hey, it's election season, maybe this is just some good press?
I think you nailed it at the end there. I think it's election season. If they were going to do this, and for those at home, if you remember in 2017, it came to light that the Russian government somehow used Kaspersky, or they were in league with Kaspersky to take NSA tools, hacking tools. I would imagine they would have done it then. They did ban the computer use on government networks, so I thought that was the end of it. But I think you're right. This is saber rattling. I was actually surprised. I was watching last night the debate purely because I thought they'd bring this up, because the timing of it lined up. I was like, hey, they did this 2 days before. This week's, hey, we're tough on Russia. Here's what I've done. I don't think this protects the private world any more than it was 4 days ago. I think it's saber rattling.
Well, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is any security professional worth anything would have already made this decision, almost 10 years ago now at this point.
Yeah, if Kaspersky made it through your risk assessment profile and you gave it a thumbs up, you may want to reevaluate your GRC team.
Some good thoughts. So yeah, we will see if that does play out though in the political season. It's a really good point. I didn't even think of that coming up. I just thought maybe you were a masochist or something for watching the debate, but that's a separate issue.
Yeah.
Next up here, Evolve Bank confirms data breach undermining Lockbit's Federal Reserve claim. Arkansas-based Evolve Bank and Trust confirmed this week the theft of customer information, which has now been posted on the dark web. Bank representatives say the information involved PII, but not financial or banking information. So just your personal information. Don't worry about it. This appears to be a job pulled off by attackers affiliated with Lockbit, which itself had claimed to have breached the U.S. Federal Reserve. In fact, among the documents was a press release about the Federal Reserve enforcement action against Evolve Bank, alongside regarding deficiencies in anti-money laundering controls and risk management practices. So, Jim, the story has a touch of the more you look, the more you find, given that Evolve isn't your average mom and pop bank. Many of the customers whose data was stolen are startups, and many of them financial companies of some point. A lot of fintech in there. It also has the Lockbit angle, a group seemingly on the rise again after their supposed shutdown earlier this year. What's your take on this?
My take is Lockbit's good hype man, right? They posted that, and within 2 hours, I had to call my senior leadership, because I knew that was going to hit Forbes and whatever, and they were going to be like, "What's going on?" And it had nothing to do with our company. We're a healthcare organization, right? And I was like, they could be lying. You don't know. Just take it with a grain of salt till there's some proof. And as it turned out the way it is, actually, VX Underground had a good theory that they probably don't speak English. They saw a document that said Federal Reserve on it and got a little happy, right?
And if it happened to be true, kind of beside the point,
Right.
then at that point, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And since sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering. So that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't even thought about that. Kind of the wasted effort, or like I don't want to call it wasted due diligence, right? Because you do want to look into these when these claims kind of come up. But I'm wondering, how much is that a factor in like time wasted, where we can't trust these threat actors? We have to assume everything, especially from Lockbit, who has a track history, seems to be credible.
It's a lot of time wasted. I have a couple people dedicated purely on our team to cyber threat intelligence, and that's all they do all day is sift through this and wait to see and set up alerts. And it's a good chunk of your FTEs. But it's important, because if I don't get ahead of it to my senior leadership, my other peers in the organization, they will lose confidence. And if I can say ahead of time, hey, this is a problem, you're going to see this, it doesn't affect us, it does affect us, it helps a lot with the trust.
All right, next up here, UK's largest nuclear site pleads guilty over cybersecurity failures. The company that manages the Cellfield nuclear site in northern England has pleaded guilty to 3 criminal charges over cybersecurity failings. Cellfield is no longer a functioning nuclear plant, but is currently housing more plutonium than any other location on Earth, and also has a number of facilities for things like nuclear decommissioning and waste processing and storage. As such, it's considered one of the most complex and hazardous nuclear sites in the world. I would assume most nuclear sites fall into complex and hazardous to some degree. The criminal charges focus on failures to comply with approved security plans between 2019 and early 2023, which is a long time. In admitting these failures, Sellafield management is also denying reports from The Guardian that the facility might also have been compromised by hacking groups linked to both China and Russia. So, Jim, basically every sentence in the story has something more that I don't want to hear. There was a story in the BBC from December of last year that shows the chief of security, Ewan Hutton, defending his actions while still admitting that there were problems, like cracks in an open-air pond full of radioactive sludge. But hey, they're keeping an eye on it. Yeah. Again, not great. I know this is a UK story. This plant is in the UK, but every country seems like they're having similar types of issues. Do we wait until we get another 3 Mile Island or Love Canal before acting here?
No, my shock was the same as yours reading that article. And I was just hoping at the end we got some Ninja Turtles out of it or something. Right? That's the only positive that could have come out of it. But you have this problem in our infrastructure here. You've got is it the Hue? I can never pronounce them, that are deep into our infrastructure.
Oh, yes.
You've got Volt Typhoon. They were going to shut off all of our infrastructure or communications if China decides to invade Taiwan. We've got the same massive problems here. We've got, I was dealing with a peer of mine I was talking to at another energy company, and they were talking about how they use torrents to update their firmware on their devices. And I'm like, we're way behind in this legacy equipment. There's two industries that are just commonly getting hit, and that's healthcare and it's energy infrastructure, utilities, and it's because of legacy stuff like that. And we're just going to keep having that problem. And I don't know the answer on modernizing, because they've shut down all the programs for the most part.
Yeah, it's that problem of needing to, these are essential services, right? Like power is essential, right? Healthcare is essential, and that leads into a whole other realm of inheriting technical debt, right? Like taking on technical debt so you can keep operations moving over the long term, and then that turns into this legacy long tail where we're dealing with trying to network SCADA systems that were never designed for it, and building on all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it really, I mean, at some point I would have thought it was the Colonial Pipeline attacks, right? That would have been the definitive wake-up call to be like, we need to, take this on. Like you said, some of the programs for this have gone away. I know CISA is making a lot of initiatives
Yes.
to more systemically address this, but it does feel like drops in a bucket at this point.
Yeah, it's just hard. You've got, like you said, you nailed on the head. You've got these systems that weren't designed to do these things, that weren't supposed to live for 50 years. You don't have anyone making new systems to replace it, and you've got to have access to do the things they need to do. It's a real tough problem.
At some point, maybe we'll run out of quarter-inch floppies, and then we'll all be forced to move on, at least for some of the critical infrastructure stuff. So here's hoping.
Yeah.
All right, before we move on, now we have to spend a word and a moment with our sponsor for today, Prelude Security. 30 minutes or less isn't just for pizza delivery. It can be how fast you know you're protected against the latest threats. Visit preludesecurity.com/threats for a free delivery of threat hunting queries, detection rules, and security tests based on any piece of threat intelligence. Weekend Review listeners can head to preludesecurity.com/threats to upload their intelligence and know with certainty. That's PRELUDE security.com/threats. Next up here, fresh MoveIt bug under attack just hours after disclosure. A high severity vulnerability in MoveIt transfer software is being actively exploited just hours. Excuse me, getting a disruption here. Okay, sorry about that. Something freaked out in my system here. I'm going to restart on that with the MoveIt bug. Fresh MoveIt bug under attack just hours after disclosure. A new high-severity vulnerability in MoveIt transfer software is being actively exploited just hours after it was made public. Researchers determined that attackers could exploit the bug by using a forced authentication attack with a malicious SMB server and a valid username, or by impersonating any user on the system by uploading their own SSH public key to the server without logging in, then use the key to authenticate. Admin should move to patch versions as soon as possible. I guess table stakes advice there for everybody. But Jim, I'm curious, what do you make of these two attack vectors? Are they original, or do they reveal new flaws in the design of MoveIt?
I'm probably pretty sure they've been there. I don't think they're a new thing. I just think they found it. They took it. I have to give them credit initially. If y'all are MoveIt customers, you would have gotten emails for weeks before this saying, "Hey, patch."
Mm-hmm.
So I have to give them credit on that front. What I don't give them credit for is they thought it was a 7.4 and it was this particular part. But once there's blood in the water, people start looking at things, and then it had to escalate it to 9.1 when they realized there was another third-party component. So the patch actually doesn't work to mitigate the problem. So Census actually pulled a report, and I think it was 2,700 instances online before this was released. And then once they came out and said, hey, you need to patch, now there's only 1,800 2 days later. So people are listening to this one because of last year's instance with the Clop ransomware group that hit a lot of us. I'm imagining all 1,800 of those are probably healthcare too.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've received my fair share of MoveIt disclosures over the past couple of months here, for sure. CCL in the chat had a question here. Didn't they try to implement their own version of SFTP or SFTP? Yes. I'm not sure on that, CCL. I will have to look into that. I don't want to overspeak the case for MoveIt here. But yeah, definitely, it's one of these things where I feel like this is almost on the level of like we hear about new Spectre level vulnerabilities. Obviously, like this is way more practical and way more in your face. I feel like we're just going to be hearing about this because there's such inertia to move off of these types of platforms that we're just going to be hearing about this for years to come.
Yeah, it's a problem, and in the same way that faxing's a problem, right? You would think if we're not using FTP, we're using faxing in healthcare, and you've got to move on to something, I don't know, crazy new secured connections. But it goes back to legacy stuff, and it has to be out there, it has to be exposed, and you better have your lockdown, IPs right and sourced right, not just any rule.
All right, our next story here, DHS aims to streamline clearance approvals to increase headcount. As lawmakers at a House hearing pointed out the federal government's cumbersome hiring process that has undermined its ability to recruit cyber talent. CIO Eric Heisen responded that the DHS uses a multi-pronged approach, included through its cybersecurity talent management system and by assessing clearance protocols, but that it's looking to reduce requirements and expand the use of interim clearances at both the secret and top secret level. This solution is just one of many proposed to assist with the estimated 500,000 vacant cyber-related jobs in the country. So, Jim, very much a tricky situation here. Understaffed. There's a recognized need that we need to staff up, bring in talent. You don't want to you want qualified people, but there is a clearance process. I guess, how do we fill this in without lowering the bar too far?
I'll counterpoint on that. I think your bigger national security threat is not filling these positions.
Okay.
The issue, and I was reading deep into this because I can turn your 20-minute show into a 4-hour show about this. But the lowering the barrier to entry to cybersecurity, the gatekeeping of, I'm going to light Twitter on fire here. You don't need a bachelor's degree to do this job. You don't need a 4-year degree. You can have great programs. There are great programs out there that do it. But if you give me a talented, smart, capable person, we can teach them this stuff. It's not rocket science in the 99% of the cases. Don't get me wrong. There's great people out there doing all kinds of crazy research that's needed in that point. But for what CISA and DHS is talking about here, you need people that can do vuln management, help with reporting. All that is trainable by just competent people. And apparently I just lost power. So
oh, no.
We'll figure that out.
All right.
Yeah. But it's a problem not to do it. They're not restricting people from the ability to, if they still need to access classified materials, they're still getting clearances. If they are not, then they don't need it, and that's what this is.
Yeah, and I know they've started to do work because I have some family that's worked in the federal government for years, and I know that they have there are very strict requirements about, like you were saying, degrees needed to obtain certain positions, certain levels within any different agency. I remember my mom laughing because someone got up to a higher grade because they had a master's in music and they're in the Department of Justice, but they had a master's degree, so they qualified for this position. So I know there's been some work both on the military and in the civilian side to make those softer, right? Not make those as hard requirements, but specifically with cyber. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that in terms of like just looking at purely as a risk proposition, right? The risk of not being properly staffed versus the risk of an insider threat of someone not being cleared or something like that. I think that's a really interesting way to think about that, and I would expect nothing less from a CISO.
Yeah.
But I won't let you sit in the dark here too long, Jim. So we will finish up with our last story here. CDK Global outage caused by Black Suit ransomware attack. In an update to one of last week's biggest stories, Bleeping Computer has learned that the operation behind CDK Global's massive IT outage and disruption to car dealerships across North America is Black Suit, an operation launched in May 2023, and which is believed to be a rebrand of the Royal ransomware operation, and therefore the direct successor of the Conti cybercrime syndicate. It's just a wonderful cybercrime family, really, at this point. If you read some of the dark web monitoring accounts on X, you'll see that Black Suit has been very busy of late. So, Jim, CDK is starting to look like this season's version of Change Healthcare, but I have a specific question here. CDK is warning that threat actors are contacting dealerships posing as CDK agents or affiliates in order to gain access to their systems. Kind of a perfect social engineering situation, appearing to be the helpful, a company spokesperson helping you out in distress. As a CISO, how do you prepare for this, especially with such a disparate kind of dealership structure that's just kind of inherent with how those businesses work?
This one's tough when you have the like you said, thousands of different dealers, different organizations. But as a CISO dealing with this change, like we had to with the Change Healthcare incident, you have to get ahead of things. You have to really hope that your senior leadership's with you and communicating, allowing you to communicate out. I went to similar situation as this. The whole streamline of our revenue stream was down because of the Change Healthcare, as well as most of America. And these car dealerships are dealing with that same problem. You're going to have panic. You're going to have a need. Anyone who's offering a branch, they're going to be all over it. And so that's where that social engineering comes into play. And that's where you as a CISO and you as a cybersecurity team need to get in front of your CEO and CIOs and be like, I need to meet with all these different teams and put these communications out. Like, do not trust anyone. Do not give them access. It's not us. And that's just the only way you can really handle that part.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, I wanted to recognize we had a comment in from Kevin Farrell kind of about our federal hiring discussion that says they should be able to streamline the clearance process for applicants who currently hold public trust clearances for sure. That's his totally unbiased opinion. So thank you, Kevin, for that. Love that thought. And yeah, I think there's just a lot of, there's a lot of, I don't want to call that a little thing, but there's a lot of things that you could do to, I feel like, make a big difference. Of course, with any big bureaucracy, turning a battleship, roll out your metaphor of choice, but speed and alacrity, not exactly the federal government's MO. Before we get out of here, Jim, was there any story here that was a thumbs up or an eye roller for you this week that just kind of caught your attention?
The eye roller was Lockbit claiming to hack the Federal Reserve, but it was important to look at on that front.
Yeah, for sure. And also, we had just a few hours ago, we had kind of the revelations that Nobelium and aka Cozy Bear has been attacking TeamViewer 2. I know we'll be getting some coverage on that on cybersecurity headlines. So look for that. Lots of. Listen, it's rough out there for using third-party software. It's a rough time out there for you. Jim, is there anywhere we can send people to follow you on cyberspace? You had some great insights today. Really appreciate it. Where can people follow you online?
LinkedIn is the best place if you want to reach out. And if you have any questions or follow up on this, just say, hey, we talked on the show, or I saw you on the show, and I'm happy to get back to you. If you're a CISO on LinkedIn, it's all vendors trying to sell you stuff. So please differentiate yourself, or else I won't know it was you.
Yeah, I just want 5 minutes of your time. Don't worry, Jim. Yeah,
exactly.
No. Well, thank you so much, Jim Bowie, the CISO at Tampa General Hospital, staying with us in the dark. Shout out to your uninterrupted power supply,
Thank you.
holding it down there. That's pretty impressive. And thank you also to J. Walter Smith for also rolling your eyes at the whole Lockbit claim on the Federal Reserve. Hey, listen, you can't blame them for trying, I guess. I mean, you can blame them for like everything else. They seem like they're horrible people. But anyway, so glad to see you're not alone on that one, Jim. Thanks also to our sponsor for today, Prelude Security. You're 30 minutes away from peace of mind. Visit them at preludesecurity.com/threats, PRELUDE security.com/threats. Thanks also to our audience today. We had some people on LinkedIn and YouTube getting in, leaving some comments. Always appreciate everybody coming in, throwing some questions, some insight, and their own expertise. We are here every single Friday, except for next Friday, which is we're taking off for the 4th of July. So you could still show up on YouTube and follow the CISO series. We just won't be broadcasting. That's okay. We'll be back the week after that, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Most Fridays, you can find us here. We always have a fun time, but you can still get your daily news fix, except for 4th of July, cybersecurity headlines every day, 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. A lot of exclusions. 4th of July, we're celebrating America. I hope you are too, if you're in the U.S. If not, just have a fun 4th of July. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Straffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.